Chair will move House File 28 be referred to the Committee on Ways and Means. Representative Joachim, welcome to the committee. You know the routine. I also think, I believe it's an author's amendment. I can move that whatever time you wish me to do that.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members. Thank you for hearing House File 28. And yes, there is a A1 amendment that has a minor addition that the Elder Justice Center requested regarding the types of training offered. And I would very much appreciate if the chair would move that amendment.
Very well, members. House File 28 being before us, the chair moves the A1 amendment, which essentially puts the bill in the shape that the author wishes it to be before us today. Any discussion on that? Hearing none, all in favor of that motion, please say aye.
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 Opposed, same sign. Motion prevails. And House File 28, as amended, is before us. Representative Joachim.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, members. Many of us bring forward bills that are born from experiences that we've had. For me, that is the case with this bill. My grandmother, who's now gone, had Alzheimer's the last few years of her life. At the time, she was a widow living alone in her home, and her children were sharing the tasks of helping her age in place. There was always a worry and a concern that my grandmother would get out of the house on her own somehow. She lived in North St. Paul, a block from Lake Phalen, and while the proximity of water was a concern, so was the Minnesota winter. If a vulnerable adult that has Alzheimer's or any other type of dementia does wander off, minutes could make a difference. In 2014, when I came to the legislature, this issue was at the top of my mind. I had heard of the silver alerts and crafted a bill to have a working group look at whether or not a silver alert would be effective in Minnesota. That bill passed, the working group met, and the bill before you is part of their recommendations. I would like to thank the Alzheimer's Association for being with me every step of the way on this very personal project. In Section 1, Subdivision 1, there's an appropriation from the General Fund to the Department of Public Safety for grants from the Office of Justice Programs and to make changes to the Crime Alert Network. Subdivision 2 are details on how the OJP would administer regional and statewide voluntary training grants to state and local law enforcement so that they can understand the population that they serve who has Alzheimer's or dementia. It is focused on law enforcement agencies that have less than 45 peace officers. There has been a reporting requirement as well. In Subdivision 3, there are details of the appropriation to the Minnesota Criminal Alert Network to create an additional category to the Endangered Missing Persons Alert for those with Alzheimer's or dementia, as well as find ways to increase membership in the program. While I've shared my personal story in the beginning, I know that it's not unique and that I'm not alone. I'm sure many of you around this table have similar stories, and I have testifiers here today who'd like to share their stories as well. I should also mention that besides the Alzheimer's Association, we have support from the Association of Minnesota Fire Chiefs, the Minnesota Police and Peace Officers Association, the Minnesota Chapter of Emergency Physicians, as well as the Minnesota Ambulance Association. I have 4 testifiers with me that will briefly describe why this bill is needed, and I'd like to first kick it off to Josh Ney, who's the Manager of State Affairs for the Alzheimer's Association.
Terrific, thank you, Representative Joachim. Mr. Josh Ney, if you can state your name for the record and please provide us with your testimony, we would appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair and members of the committee, my name is Josh Nye, and I'm the Manager of State Affairs for the Alzheimer's Association. Thank you for the opportunity to speak in support of HF28. And thank you to Representative Joachim for introducing this bill and to the bipartisan co-authors on the committee for your support. Almost 2/3 of those living with Alzheimer's are women. Older Black or African Americans are 2 times more likely, and older Hispanic or Latinx Americans are 1.5 times more likely to have Alzheimer's or other dementia than older whites. Nationwide, an estimated 11.2% of white Americans and 21.4% of Black or African Americans over the age of 71 have Alzheimer's or another form of dementia. And we estimate there are 99,000 Minnesotans living with Alzheimer's in Minnesota, excuse me. This number is expected to reach 120,000 by 2025. First responders will encounter more people with dementia and their families as this number continues to grow. They will interact while searching for a missing person with dementia, while answering a call about abuse or neglect, even during a perceived routine traffic stop. 6 in 10 people with dementia will wander, And a missing person with Alzheimer's isn't like a missing adult without cognitive impairment. They don't know they need help. They can't explain that they're lost, and they're unable to recognize their own body is telling them to stop. HF28 will keep Minnesotans with dementia safe by ensuring first responders have the tools, training, and resources needed to help this growing population, especially when they're in crisis. And I ask for your support. Thank you.
Excuse me. Thank you, Mr. Nye. And I apologize for mispronouncing your last name. Your testimony actually conjured up some painful memories. For me, my wife's family has had a devastating swath of Alzheimer's that's cut through her father's generation. And we've witnessed some of the instances that you've identified as having been a part of their daily existence. Thank you, sir, and hopefully you can stay around a bit for questions. Very well. With that, Professor Joachim, I have Mr. Brian Peters next, and if that's okay, I'll call on Brian Peters, Executive Director of the Minnesota Peace and Police Officers Association. If you can come forward, sir, state your name for the record and provide us with your testimony.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Brian Peters. I'm the Executive Director of the Minnesota Police and Peace Officers Association. Thank you, Chair Mariani and members of the committee for allowing me to tell a brief story. Early in my career, many, many years ago, as a new police officer in the city of Brooklyn Center, I was on patrol one evening, and it was kind of cold, really chilly that night. And I was patrolling in an area that usually sees a lot of activity. Well, this night it was pretty quiet. And I had driven past a gas station, and nobody was there except an elderly gentleman at a gas pump. And I drove by, didn't think anything of it, and continued on. About 45 minutes later, I returned to the same gas station, and the same man was still at the gas pump. Before, he was outside. It looked like he was ready to pump his gas. And this time, he was just sitting in his car with the gas nozzle still in the car. And I thought it was odd. I went in and asked the clerk if there was anything strange with the gentleman still out there. And they had no idea that he was actually out there. So I went up to him and I started talking with him. We had a good conversation. I asked him what he was doing. He said he was getting gas. And I said, sir, do you know how long you've been here? And he said, well, I just got here and I'm getting gas. And I just continued to dialogue with him. I knew that he wasn't suffering any medical issue. And I asked him, did he have any money to pay for the gas, or did he pay for the gas? And he said, yeah, I already paid, which I verified that he didn't. And so at this point I was getting concerned, but I didn't know necessarily what I was dealing with. Again, I was a very new officer. And I asked if I could see his driver's license, and he gave it to me. And I ended up going into the system, and I ran his name. And luckily we had a previous contact, and there was a name associated with that contact that ended up to be his daughter. So I was able to finally get a phone number. And by this time it was around 3 in the morning. I was able to get the daughter's phone number, and I called and woke her up, and I said, you know, I'm with your father here in Brooklyn Center, and they lived in Coon Rapids at the time. And I said, I just explained, you know, kind of my brief encounter with him, and her heart sank. She said, I'm so thankful. We've been trying to get him into an assisted living facility because he was diagnosed with Alzheimer's. And she said, I'll be right there. And again, as a new police officer, it was something that I had never experienced before, but I just thought to myself, if I didn't take the time to come back and check on him, what would have happened? And, you know, since then, I think all of us have seen so many pictures on the news of help find this individual. You know, the internet has been a great tool to also bring awareness. But I just think that, you know, this is a great bill. We completely support it. I think that any additional training for police officers in this area would be helpful and probably would save a life. So with that, that's my story. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Peters. A good story paints an accurate description of why laws and policies are important. Fortunate for that gentleman that you were there at that point in time, but obviously Representative Joachim is looking for ways to make sure that whoever responder is going to be there, will approach interactions with good best practices as you demonstrated. With that, Representative Joachim, I have two others as well. So let me call them one at a time. Aubrey, and I hope I pronounce this correct, Aubrey Hagen, an Alzheimer's advocate. If you can come forward and identify yourself for the record and give us your testimony, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. My name is Aubrey Hagen, and I am from Duluth, Minnesota. I have been a caregiver for my mother who suffers from early onset Alzheimer's for 7 years. Growing up, my mom was my best friend. Every moment we spent together was full of laughter. She loved deeply and endlessly. She was gentle and compassionate, and she lit up our room when she walked in it. Watching this disease dismantle her loving spirit piece by piece has been one of the most devastating things I have ever gone through. Navigating my mother's disease was never easy, as Alzheimer's manifests in many different ways. During her time in a local memory care facility, my mom's dementia began to accelerate into unpredictable and quite shocking behavior. She would react to staff members with sudden anger or at times even violence. And on one such occasion, the staff called 911. My mother was nearly transported in the back of a police car to the hospital until thankfully a family member was able to rush to the facility and insist that she be transported by ambulance. The terror and isolation of riding in the back of a police car with two officers she did not know would have been tremendously traumatizing for my mother. When I arrived at the hospital, I was immediately intercepted by a frantic staff member, rushed into a room where I found my mom in a bed, shaking and crying with the two police officers flanking her on either side. I remember how scared she looked and how her arms immediately reached out for me. I'm sure that the responding officers did what they were trained to do when someone is reported to be violent or combative, but my mother was not a normal case. She was suffering from a disease that not many people have the knowledge or education to truly understand. She was disillusioned and frightened, and I was not present to advocate for her. It was apparent to me that these officers did not have the appropriate training to understand the common symptoms of dementia or how to communicate with my mom. I only wish that I had been there to explain to them that my mom is not a violent or dangerous individual. She is a kind, loving person who is suffering at the hands of a brutal, unforgiving disease. That is why the Alzheimer's Association is working to pass House File 28. Having officers who were trained to work with people like my mother would have made a world of difference for her experience that day. I ask, please support House File 28 to ensure that more first responders have access to this critical training and so that they can support people like my mom in the community. Thank you very much for your time and attention, and I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you, Ms. Hagen. And yes, if you can stick around a bit, I do see the questions are popping up. We do have one more testifier. And thank you for sharing your story. You know, we do get a lot of sharing in this committee of personal stories of Minnesotans, and I always want to acknowledge the initiative that people like you take to come forward to help us shape good laws that serves everybody, including in this case your loved one. And please know that we work awfully hard to approach that with care and concern. And much love. And so blessings to you and to your family.
Thank you so much.
With that, I have Mr. John Vermell, retired Apple Valley Police Captain. Captain Vermell, if you can come forward and identify yourself for the record and provide us with your testimony, we would appreciate it.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. My name is John Vermell. I'm here this afternoon in two capacities. One is a retired Apple Valley Police Captain, and the second as the son of a beautiful woman that Alzheimer's disease devastated. As a public safety professional, I support the law enforcement training proposed in this bill. Recognizing dementia and Alzheimer's will help tailor an officer's approach to an individual and to treat that person with the respect and dignity they deserve. Recognizing signs of dementia and Alzheimer's in drivers will help prompt the necessary steps to help get a person out from behind the wheel when they are suffering from this disease. This is an invaluable service to families who recognize the driving problem, but often feel powerless to intervene. Learning to discern signs of neglect, abuse, and fraud also facilitate critical intervention. I remember a number of cases as a law enforcement professional where a predator got access to a person with dementia or Alzheimer's as a guardian with power of attorney, gaining the ability to make nefarious, devastating decisions about finances and medical treatment, including prescription medications. Making this type of training available to law enforcement, especially agencies without deep resources, is important, and I would even go as far as to say critical. As a family member, devastated by watching a loved one decline from Alzheimer's, I support the enhanced alert capabilities. When we were caring for my mom, before we got her into a transitional care facility, she left the house one day. I didn't know she left for a walk and hadn't returned. And until you experience that, you don't know the feeling. It's just rock bottom. Thankfully, I had insight into processes, and I had personal relationships that allowed us to call local law enforcement. In this case, it was the Lakeville Police Department. We got an effective response from them with personal touch. Officers looked for mom. They found her. They returned her home safely. And with dignity, the officer led her out of the car for the last half block to walk home. My mom's a very proud woman. So this is the attitude of service, compassion, and care that I hope the training and provisions in this bill will foster. And because of that, I fully support it. Thank you.
Thank you, Captain Vermell, for your testimony, and also for reminding us of the central importance of the application of not only how we interact with one another in society, but the expectations that we should have of our public institutions and our public agents to be able to reinforce the dignity of others and to approach our work with much compassion. Much blessings to you and to your beloved mother. And also thank you, Captain Vermell, for also pointing out the need for resources for, as this bill identifies, I believe, Representative Joachim, for the development of tools, training, particularly for agencies that may not have the resource base to be able to provide that. With that, members, we're going to open this up for questions and discussion. We have 4 members currently seeking recognition. We'll begin with Representative Poston and then followed by Representative Huot. Representative Poston.
Thank you, Chair Mariani. Representative Joachim, I just want to say thank you to you for bringing forth this really, really important bill and for asking me to be a co-author on it. Thank you. This is very personal, hits very close to home for me. I lost my father and my mother to dementia. My wife lost her first husband to dementia. So my stepdaughter lost her father to dementia. And we've certainly shared a lot of stories about how this awful disease changes people. My 5'5" tall, 90-pound mother had sundowner syndrome. And if you're not familiar with that, people with sundowner syndrome can get really mean and actually can get kind of physical. And I actually heard her, and I was 55 years old at the time. I actually heard her swear for the first time in my life, you know, and so it does change people. Yeah, I can see where a police officer would really, or a first responder would really have a hard time being able to identify who they're dealing with without this training. So I think it's really, really very, very important. And Chair Mariani, if I could just take I'll call it a point of personal privilege for just a minute. I don't get to brag about my wife and my stepdaughter very often, but you know, some good comes out of things like this. And in my case, my wife and my stepdaughter have done some really remarkable things. They're certainly Alzheimer's advocates. My daughter has become an author. She writes Alzheimer's books for children. My wife has started this support group in the Brainerd Lakes area for people that have a spouse that has Alzheimer's, helping them through that process. My daughter has spoke at the Meeting of the Minds, which is a yearly or annual meeting, and talked about the effect on children. My wife and my daughter started the Walk to End Alzheimer's in the Brainerd Lakes area, which now brings in about $150,000 a year. Started in 2009 at zero, and today they bring in about $150,000 a year. So I thank you for just let me brag just a little bit, to say the least. I'm very proud of them. And Representative Joachim, thank you again for bringing this forward. You have all my support. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Representative Huot, and a shout out and honor to your wife and your daughter for their passion and their work.
Thank you, Chair.
Representative Huot, and then Representative Johnson. Representative Huot.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Representative Joachim. We've had many discussions about this bill, and I just really think it's a great bill. As you are aware, and Brian Peters is also aware, we get a lot of requests for training to go to officers and first responders. As I get a lot of those bills because I'm in that arena, and everything from mushroom awareness to how to use a cell phone. This bill really is going to do a lot of help with a lot of our police officers and first responders. It's one of those areas that as an EMT, I probably took a unit on this in school, but I never had a refresher on it, and it really would help. So I really do support this, and thank you so much for bringing this forward. And I think I'm looking forward to seeing the good work that this bill does. Thank you.
Very well. Thank you, Representative Huot. We have Representative Johnson and Representative Hollins. Representative Johnson.
Chair Mariani, Representative Joachim, I want to thank you for bringing this forward. I support this bill 100%. But I do have a couple concerns or questions on it. I'm glad you limited these grants and stuff to smaller police departments. 90% of our police departments and sheriff's offices are less than 50 officers. We have the large ones like Minneapolis, the State Patrol, and St. Paul, and a few other ones. But I'm also concerned because Minneapolis and are involved with two other small departments inside the cities of the first class. That is the Three River Parks District and the Minneapolis Park Police. They're smaller. Plus, we also have three state agencies that are small in numbers as well, which is Alcohol and Gambling Enforcement, Commerce and Fraud Bureau, Department of Corrections. I have a tough time. I want to get these grants to the offices that are actually working in the public, especially with these smaller departments that can't afford the training. I'm glad it covers 90% of them, but I'm just wondering if we should tweak it a little bit to make sure it goes to actual departments that are not state agencies or affiliated with the cities of the first class where they have better funding to do this. But like I say, I'm glad you're bringing this forward, and I would like to see this go straight to the general register now because it's that important. I myself have had family members with those issues, and I know how frustrating it is for the families. But I can also tell you, as an officer, it's frustrating trying to get the information to find out who these people are in order to actually find out where they belong. I've dealt with it myself in my career, and I would say any officer with any experience at all on the road has dealt with this. They know how to deal with it, but it's a little extra training doesn't hurt. And I'm also glad it's not mandated training. It's so the departments have more issues with it can actually get the training they need. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Johnson. Representative Hollins, and then we do have some amendments that we'll take up. Representative Hollins.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I also am completely in favor of this bill, so maybe this is a pointless exercise at this point, but I just wanted to illustrate a real world situation where this would come into play. My grandmother suffered from Alzheimer's, and you know, she was a Black woman in the South, and she would cook, and she would frequently leave her house with a knife in her hand. And it wasn't that she was interested in harming anybody or doing anything, you know, nefarious. She was just confused, and she would decide to go for a walk and forget to put down a large kitchen knife. And I think having this additional training is so important because it is only by the grace of God that she made it out of that situation alive and well. And it happened multiple times. So I'm really thankful that Representative Joachim brought this forward. I'm really grateful for the Alzheimer's Association working with her on this because this is so critical and so important for anybody who has a loved one who has suffered from dementia. So thank you.
Thank you, Representative Hollins. And a good reminder of several things. One is the many expectations we have of our first responders and peace officers in particular. We did hear this last summer during the police accountability debate, the incredible stresses that can provide and the need for stresses on the officers and the need for good, strong training in order to interact you know, with the ways that we've heard today, with you know, positive interactions that lead to good conclusions. That sometimes just happens, but we have the ability to help push it in that way with these kind of proposals. I did see Representative Cleaver raise her hand, so Representative Cleaver.
Thank you. I just need a point of clarification. So with Representative Johnson's comment, and I think either Representative Joachim or Mr. Nye could answer this question for me. So Three Rivers Park District is based in the city of Plymouth. We are not a city of the first class, but we do have a police department with the city of over 50 officers. So would Three Rivers Parks be receiving funding under this? Because I look at their park district and it has lots of winding paths that they know best. And I do agree with Representative Johnson that we want to make sure that all of the small departments receive the grants to help with their training. I know Plymouth does a lot of training in this area, but would Three Rivers Parks be covered by this?
Yeah, great question, and thanks for helping the chair not simply blow by an observation that probably did require some interpretation. So I appreciate that. I'm going to turn to Representative Joachim, and Representative Joachim, we also have fiscal and House staff here that might help with that.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. It's $400,000 for 2022 and 2023, and it's not a mandatory training, so agencies can apply to get the grants, and of course, it's not nearly enough money to address all the agencies across the state. In the language on line 1.23, you'll also see that it gives priority for departments of 45 officers or less, but that doesn't mean if not enough people with 45 officers or less applied, that it wouldn't then go to other agencies. Like I said, this is just a beginning. Hopefully we can look at maybe putting this, I've seen other bills, I think Representative O'Neill had one in the past that then put the appropriation into the base budget, but I didn't think that was feasible this year. So this is just a start.
And I think I do know the answer, but just to be clear, because Representative Cleavorn asked about the Three Rivers jurisdiction, which exists physically within another jurisdiction, another law enforcement jurisdiction, at least geographically. I take it that those entities, including perhaps like the Minneapolis Park Board, would then be eligible for these grants?
Chair Mariani, I kick it over to your nonpartisan staff to answer, because I don't want to speak out of turn, but the way I see it drafted saying agencies under 45, that would mean any agency under 45.
So the author's intent is that it would be that. I'm wondering if our House staff, I don't know which one of our members can help us answer that question. Mr. Diebel?
Mr. Chair and members, yes, I assume since it's a licensed peace officer agency that it would be entitled to apply for the grant, just like the others. And I'm not certain how many officers they have, so I don't know if they would meet that 45 threshold or not, though.
Okay, I think that's very helpful. Thank you, Mr. Diebel, and thank you, Representative Cleavorn, for returning us back to that. So members, let's go forward with the amendments. There are two amendments. There's the, actually one amendment. We already did the first one. The A2 amendment, who's authoring that?
That would be myself, Representative Johnson.
Thank you, Representative. Representative Johnson moves adoption of the A2 amendment. Representative Johnson, to your amendment.
Let me get it up here. That's, of course, when I want it, the computer's not working properly.
That happened to me the other day in Ways and Means, Representative Johnson, and it was I have it up here now. The A2 amendment is very simple. Generally, when we have these grants, especially things like this, we have who's ever sending out the funding, whether it's OJP or any other one of the divisions that send out grants, we have a certain percentage that we allow for administrative costs. This one does not have one on there, and I want to get as much funding to these grants as possible. So my amendment allows for 1% of the total amount of the appropriation that's available to use for administrative costs incurred by the department in carrying out the provisions of this section. I've seen, I think I've seen some as high as 5% for administrative costs, but I want to keep it as small as possible because I want to get these officers trained the best they can, because Alzheimer's and dementia is a huge issue that we need to deal with. Very well, thank you, Representative Johnson. Representative Joachim.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and Representative Johnson. It's my understanding, I reached out to DPS today when I found out about the amendment, and the OJP already has a standing appropriation for administrative costs at 2.5% within their budget. And they had intended to tap into that to help administer this. And I'm worried that adding this language would actually add another 1% on top of that. So for now, I'd ask members to vote no on this.
Chair Mariani.
Johnson.
Yeah, instead of 2.5% that would come off of this, this would limit it to a 1%, which would get more funds to these officers. I think that I would hope that this committee would look at the importance of this and get as much funding out to the officers to get the training they can use. So I would appreciate the accepting of this amendment.
Further discussion? I see Representative O'Neill is back and rather present. Representative O'Neill, is it to this amendment?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Very well. Representative O'Neill.
I was just going to ask if nonpartisan staff could explain, because there's a conflict between the author of the amendment and the author of the bill, if they could just explain, as I've just come on, like which is correct? Does it supersede what is customary with OJP with 1%, or does it add on top?
Fair question. Not sure who that is. Perhaps Mr. Waltz.
Mr. Chair?
Mr. Waltz, please.
I seem to have lost the amendment on my screen. I just need to get it back here. But if the appropriation specifies a percentage to be used for administration, that would refer to only the portion of money. Only the money in the appropriation would be subject to that, and not prior appropriations. Is that the answer the member was looking for?
Senator O'Neill.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So if I'm understanding Mr. Walls correctly, then it would only be the 1%, not 1% on top of the 2.5%. Is that correct, Mr. Walls?
Mr. Walls. And I think Mr. Walls, this goes to Representative Joachim's testimony that there's I don't know how this works either, but that there's a standing appropriation amount fixed in the OJP grant guidelines, that perhaps universal guidelines. I'm not sure I'm saying that rightly, Representative Joachim, but I think
Mariani,
we're referring to Representative Johnson.
Maybe Katie Knutson can clarify.
Katie Knutson from the Public Safety Administration. Are you present?
I am here, Mr. Chair, and I would also offer that Director Weeks is also in on this Zoom hearing, and if you would allow, Mr. Chair, I would ask the director to clarify for us what the OJP statute is.
We have all the experts here. It's terrific. Ms. Weeks, please.
Good afternoon, Chair, members. My name is Kate Weeks. I'm the Executive Director of the Office of Justice Programs. Thanks for having me this afternoon. Under the rider language in the Public Safety Bill, each year authorization is given to OJP to use 2.5% of any grant to use towards administration. Typically, throughout state government, that would be 5% for grant administration, and some federal grants do allow for up to 10%. And what this covers is really development of the RFP, and you can see the additional requirements in the legislation to develop this important RFP. But it also goes into launching the RFP process, the grant review process, reaching out to grantees, the amount of work that goes with supporting grantees and getting signed up on the state system, understanding the rules and requirements for receiving the grant, and reporting requirements and monitoring. So this money goes a long way in administering the grant and making sure that the money is being used for the purposes that you decide.
Very well, thank you. It's very helpful. Representative O'Neill, I still see your hand up.
Mr. Chair, if I might. So thank you, Ms. Weeks. I'm just wondering if you could clarify whether or not the Johnson Amendment would add an additional 1% above the 2.5, or would it actually shrink your administration down to 1%? Because that's what we're confused about. And we would like clarity if you knew that answer. And maybe if you're not sure, maybe Mr. Walls has got that answer.
Ms. Weeks.
Chair, members, from my reading of the amendment, it looks like it reduces our ability to use the funding for grant administration to 1%. I don't read it as an addition. So that would limit it to approximately $4,000 a year for grant administration.
Very well. Representative Raleigh.
Not to the amendment, Chair. It's a general question.
All right, we'll keep you on the list then. Representative Cleveland.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So this is to Ms. Weeks. I'm not a big fan of unfunded mandates. So I'm thinking about the work that you've just outlined. Is it possible to do that work on only 4,000? It sounds like a lot of work, and additionally changing computer systems or adding requests for proposals, all of that. Could you do that on $4,000?
This Weeks.
Chair, members, I think it's a great question. And so what we do is we don't have for grants administration, we really rely on this administrative money, this percentage, to pay for our staff. And so our staff is paid for. So if we had a grant manager who has a caseload of different types of grants, we do administer many grants through the Office of Justice Programs. And so that person's time would be used, if they're working on this particular grant, they would use that administrative fund from that grant for what they're doing. The amount of work can depend. A lot of time we see some fluctuation in, if someone is a current grantee of ours, they might not need all of the support. But if someone is new or a new grantee to the state system, there are a lot of rules and requirements that come along with receiving a grant. And we want to make sure that grantees are successful and meeting the reporting requirements, the financial requirements, and understanding what it means to be a grantee. So that support and time can vary, and getting used to the state system in e-grants. So it can vary, but it does we take pride in the support that we give our grantees, because we want to make sure that they're successful.
Very well, thank you, Ms. Weeks. It does occur to the chair that, and I don't think anyone's disputing this, that there are costs to actually administering programs. There's people's salaries, there's equipment, et cetera. And so the question becomes, how much of that, should be covered by any particular grant. And that's a fair disagreement, but it is important to establish that cost exists. Representative Joachim, and then Representative Johnson, then we'll move to a decision on the.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Ms. Weeks and Ms. Knudsen and Representative Cleaborn for pointing out something that's really important. And thank you for clarifying that as well. I think 2.5% compared to other agencies that use 5 or 10% is a small price to pay. My concern is if we cut that down even more, it is only a 2-year grant process. And we want to get to smaller departments that may not have had a grant before, with officers under 45, and might not know the system and might not know it's even existing. So just being able to have that administrative process to help reach out to folks for the RFP would be very, very important. And 2.5% seems a small price to pay to get this money out the door quickly.
All right, Representative Johnson, then we're going to move forward. Representative Johnson.
Chair Mariani, members. As a peace officer and working with multiple different departments, I know that I don't know of a single department that's not in the system for doing grants. They're doing grants all the time. And most counties and most cities have people lined up to help write these grants to make sure they're done properly and that all documentation is in place. What I'm more concerned about is the fact that we need to get the officers that want this training trained so they can do a good job with that. And especially the younger officers who haven't had to deal with this much. Those are the ones that really need the training. Older officers have dealt with this situation and they understand it and they're good at dealing with them. As Mr. Peters had said how he dealt with the situation he had, and I've also dealt with them in my career. So I want to get as much money to the program as possible. And we've had testimony that they actually, on some of the federal grants, they get up 10, 15% as well, where they can shift that money around to help. I want to get this money to the officers, to their training. And with that, I do request a roll call.
Very well. Representative Johnson requests a roll call on the A2 amendment. The clerk will take the roll.
Chair Mariani?
No.
Vice Chair Frazier?
No.
Representative Johnson?
Yes.
Representative Edelson? Representative Edelson? Representative Feist?
No.
Representative Grosso?
Yes.
Representative Hollins?
No.
Representative Hewitt?
No.
Representative Cleaborn?
No.
Representative Long?
No.
Representative Lucero?
Yes, ma'am.
Representative Mueller?
Mueller votes yes.
Representative Novotny?
Yes.
Representative O'Neill?
Yes.
Representative Pinto?
No.
Representative Poston?
Aye.
Representative Rowley?
Always a yes.
Representative Vang?
No.
Representative Zhang?
No.
Representative Edelson?
No.
That concludes roll call.
Can you give us your count, please?
8 ayes, 11 nays.
Very well. Members, after a good discussion, I really did appreciate this discussion, and a vote of 11 nays and 8 ayes, the motion does not prevail, and the bill is not amended with the A2 amendment. Representative Joachim, final words for us, and I believe actually our motion is to send this to the Ways and Means. I have instructions here to lay over, and I think it's because, in fact, there is a $400,000 a year appropriation, which is an appropriate then issue for the committee to determine. This is just for new members, you know, more than anything else in the public, that it's very unusual for us to send bills out with a cost unless there's already a identified source for that, and there's an agreement to move forward with that. Typically, those are special revenue funds. In this case, this would be part of the determination of this finance committee as it puts together its finance budget bill a little bit later in the session. So what we will typically do then is either vote a bill down completely or lay it over so that we then would take it back up at the point at which we are reconstructing our budget bill. And so that I will be laying this over, but Representative Joachim, final words and no doubt encouragement for us on the bill.
Mr. Chair, I think Representative Rowley is waving at you.
Representative Rowley. Oh, I'm sorry. So you did want to comment on the bill. I
did. No worries. Thank you, Chair. I appreciate it. To the author of the bill, how are you, and the reason I asked the question, I was so late in raising my hand, is I heard the term RFP and that it's going to go through a process. As the author of the bill, could you give us some guidance on your intent on delivery of this training? Do you see this being in-person training, or do you see this as being an online like learning management system or LMS, or how do you see this being delivered? Because going to the amendment and going to the way that this is going to be structured, do you think this could be a centralized training that people could subscribe to, reducing the amount of a per contact training? Or is this going to be an in-person training that has to be delivered, you know, throughout the entire state? Mr. Chair.
Yes, thank you, Representative Joachim.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Representative Rowley. Actually, right in the bill is how this is going to be, how the OJP can work with the stakeholders. I am not an expert on training, or am I an expert on OJP grants? So I leave it up to the experts on how to deal with these, but maybe Mr. Nye has some additional comments because he's been working on this with me.
Mr. Nye, 20 seconds, please.
Mr. Chair and Representative Rowley, I think the answer right now is all of the above. You know, in conversations I've had with police, fire, and emergency responders, they prefer in-person training, which, given the current pandemic, we can't really do. And so I know our colleagues in North Dakota have transferred or have gone from in-person trainings to virtual trainings, which aren't as effective, but they are working. Officers in North Dakota are taking this training, they're interacting with each other, they're asking questions, and that's where we see the growth happening. And so we think it's important that there be options that we meet officers where they're at, so that somebody in Roseau, for example, can take the same training as someone in Bloomington. And so I hope that answers your question, but I think all of the above is the appropriate response.
And it sounds like a good, wise best practice. Excellent question, Representative Rowley. Thank you. Representative Joachim, you have 5 seconds to wrap us up.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to thank Mr. Peters, Ms. Hagan, and Mr. Vermell for sharing their stories, especially Ms. Hagan, of reminding us that folks that have Alzheimer's don't always look the same as what we think they will. Members, thank you for the discussion. I think this legislation is a good first step to address the safety of our seniors that we have aging in place all over our communities. This bill has truly been a labor of love for me, and I would appreciate your support.
Thank you, Representative and Chair Joachim, and thank you for all the testifiers as well for being with us here today and encouraging and informing us on this bill. The Chair will lay over House File 28 as amended and for possible inclusion in our omnibus finance bill.